The rest of the day, Valentina kept dragging the father and son from one attraction to the next. She'd done her homework. Each stop was something she thought would be fun. But no matter what it was, Nick and Jaden barely paid attention. Their hearts just weren't in it. Sensing something was off, Valentina tried to liven things up by suggesting they hit the roller coaster. Nick didn't even hesitate. Jaden's health isn't great. He can't handle something that intense. Pick something else. Valentina waved off his concern like it was nothing. I know Jaden has some health issues, but come on, he's not a little kid anymore. A bit of excitement won't kill him. When Aurea was around, she never let him do anything. She kept him on such a tight leash, he never even got to have a real childhood. But now that I'm here, I'm going to make up for all of that. I want him to grow up strong and free. She smiled confidently and reached out to ruffle Jaden's hair. She smiled brightly and reached over to ruffle Jaden's hair. Right, sweetie, Aria's not here anymore. You don't have to follow her rules. If she knew you were still afraid to do anything just because of her, she'd probably be gloating. Don't give her that satisfaction. At first, Jaden had agreed with Nick. He knew his own body, his heart wasn't strong and he'd never been able to handle too much excitement. That's why Aurea had always been so strict with him, even if it meant saying no to things other kids got to do. But when he heard Valentina's last few words, something in him snapped. That rebellious teenage instinct flared up and his voice was sharp as he shot back. Aurea, she was just a shallow woman pretending to be my mom. You think I was afraid of her? The only reason I ever let her boss me around was because she was technically my stepmom. But she's out of the picture now. I don't have to listen to her anymore. He stomped toward the roller coaster entrance like he had something to prove. Nick quickly grabbed his arm. You can't handle that kind of ride, Jay. Let's find another one. Jaden yanked his arm free. Dad, are you seriously buying into everything Aurea told you? Yeah, I've got some health issues, but they're not as bad as she made them sound. She exaggerated all of it just to keep me under control. Nick hesitated. He'd been so focused on work over the years. He hadn't paid close attention to Jaden's condition. Everything he knew about his son's health came from Aurea, and now, suddenly, he wasn't so sure what was true anymore. Jaden looked determined and stubborn. In the end, Nick caved, agreeing to ride with him just in case something went wrong. But just as they were approaching the ticket scanner, Nick caught something in the corner of his eye, a flash of a familiar figure moving through the crowd. He froze. His heart jumped. Aurea, he called out instinctively, eyes locked on the retreating figure. Aurea. Then he took off running toward the crowd, leaving Jaden and Valentina behind. Jaden tried to follow, but he and Valentina had already entered through the turnstile and couldn't get back out. Frustrated and confused, they gave up and boarded the roller coaster. Meanwhile, Nick ran through the crowd, weaving between people, chasing that glimpse of a familiar silhouette. He reached the park entrance just as the woman was about to step outside. He caught up to her and grabbed her shoulder, breathless. Aurea, where are you going? The woman jumped, startled and turned around, only to reveal a complete stranger. A young woman, clearly not Aurea, blinked up at him. Her face flushed as she took in his handsome features. Can I help you? She asked, flustered. Nick's expression froze. He let out an awkward breath and gave a stiff smile. Sorry, I thought you were someone else. He turned around, annoyed at himself. Get a grip, he told himself. Of course he was seeing her everywhere. She'd vanished from his life overnight. No warning, no closure. It was like his brain refused to accept she was gone. Just then, his phone rang. It was Valentina. Her voice was frantic. Nick, something happened. It's Jaden. He collapsed. You need to get over here. Now. Nick's blood ran cold. He bolted through the park, his heart pounding in his chest. When he got to the right, he saw Valentina sitting on the ground, cradling Jaden in her arms. The boy was unconscious, completely unresponsive. Nick froze. His blood ran cold as he stood there, staring in disbelief. Then, as reality kicked in, he scooped Jaden into his arms and took off running toward the hospital. 10 minutes later, Jaden was being rushed into the operating room. Nick paced outside, anxiety etched into every line of his face. As soon as Valentina arrived, he turned on her, his voice low and dangerous. I left him with you for just a little while and now we're here. What the hell happened? How could he have passed out? Valentina lowered her head, her voice trembling. Jaden said he'd never been on a roller coaster before. He was scared during the ride and when we got off, he collapsed. If anyone's to blame, it's Aurea. She babied him his whole life, never let him do anything and now his body can't handle even the smallest scare. Nick's jaw clenched and for the first time, he snapped at her. If you hadn't pressured him to get on that damn ride, none of this would have happened. You'd better pray he's okay, or you're going to have to deal with the consequences. Valentina flinched at the fury in his voice and shrank back, not daring to speak another word. She hadn't expected Jaden's reaction to be this extreme. Passing out over a simple roller coaster? All she'd wanted was to create a little drama, a dose of the suspension bridge effect to bring her and Nick closer. But he'd taken off mid-date, leaving her pissed and distracted. When Jaden started screaming in fear on the ride, she couldn't be bothered. She hadn't told the staff to stop the ride. She hadn't done anything. And now, here they were. Still, in her mind, it wasn't her fault. No, it was was Arius. That woman had ruined Jaden, turned him into a useless little boy who was too weak to handle the real world. And worse, she kept standing in Valentina's way. Nick waited anxiously until the light above the door turned off and the doctor finally emerged. He rushed forward. "Doctor, how's my son? He's stable now, but..." The doctor gave him a grave look. "His heart isn't in perfect condition. I'd advise you not to let him experience any more shocks like this. Next time, it could be much worse." The doctor didn't finish the sentence, but Nick got the message loud and clear. He nodded quickly in response. Soon, Jaden was wheeled out of surgery. His tiny face was pale, drained of color, looking painfully fragile. Nick followed the medical team into the room where Jaden was being transferred. As Valentina tried to come in after them, he turned around and shot her a cold glare. "You're no longer needed or allowed anywhere near Jaden," he said firmly. "Go home, pack your things. Your services are no longer required at the Ambrose estate." This decision hadn't come out of nowhere. Valentina had barely been living with them for long and already Jaden had ended up in the hospital more than once. She never cared enough to pay attention to his son's well-being. It didn't matter that her face resembled Gianna's. A woman like her was useless if she couldn't even be trusted to take care of his son. Valentina's face drained of color. Her eyes widened in disbelief and she scrambled to defend herself. "Mr. Ambrose, please, I didn't mean for this to happen. I really do care about Jaden. I swear, just give me one more chance, please." Her eyes reddened, tears brimming. She knew how to use her looks to her advantage. Usually, Nick would soften at the sight of her face, Gianna's face. But this time, he didn't budge. His voice remained flat, emotionless. "Leave." Valentina froze at the sound of his voice. There was no room for negotiation in his tone, just cold, final dismissal. Any more pleading and she'd only humiliate herself further. She bit her lower lip, turned around without another word and ran down the hallway, her heels clicking faintly against the floor. Nick turned away and stepped back into the hospital room. The nurse had just left, leaving only him and the unconscious child in the room. He sat beside the hospital bed, his eyes falling on Jaden, his son, his own flesh and blood, a boy he barely knew, a boy he had never truly raised. He used to think parenting couldn't be hard, so every time he came home and saw Aurea exhausted from taking care of Jaden, he'd dismiss it as her being overly sensitive. He assumed she was just making a fuss, being dramatic. He'd wave it off and ignore her obvious fatigue. But now that he was living it, he finally understood how wrong he'd been. Taking care of a child wasn't just about feeding and clothing them. It was about keeping them safe, emotionally and physically, 24/7. And truth be told, he had it easier. Jaden didn't harbor any resentment toward him, yet even then, caring for him was exhausting. He couldn't imagine how Aurea had managed all those years on her own. How she hadn't completely broken down under the pressure was beyond him.